Welcome to this demonstration on how to accelerate machine learning and data science with the CluedIn Data Hub. So let's log in. Now, of course, as usual, we're met with our classic dashboard where we can see what are all the kind of things that I'm alerted of that are, either connection issues with data, things I need to approve, and maybe broken policies and governance. Now, for the use case of machine learning, of course, all of these pillars are very important. It's important that we are able to integrate data from different sources in an efficient manner. It's important that we are governing this data, that we make sure that we are compliant, that we can use this data for machine learning, because a lot of the time we're going to be doing automatic processing based off this data. And so the first thing I want to do is head over to connect some data. Now in this case, I think I'm wanting to do something around customer churn. So of course for that I need to be able to specify and send or make some data available to a machine learning platform on our customers and maybe the leads as well. So companies that we're hoping to become customers. And with this I should be able to detect, based off historical customer data, what are the likelihood, the patterns of churn. And of course I'm wanting to know that up front, that if I receive a new lead or if I'm working on a particular sales deal, does this customer show the patterns of someone that will purchase the software and then churn? So obviously I'm wanting to rectify that situation or make sure that it never happens. So if we're talking about customer data, let's head over to our CRM system. Now at CluedIn we use HubSpot to do this. So I'm going to connect that. And it's going to prompt me for an API token. Now, of course, CluedIn's made sure that as much as possible we can make this whole process easier. So I should be able to just use my browser to actually remember the API token that I use to authenticate with that service. Now, one of the first things it's going to show me is, here's the data that you're expected to bring in. And when we're thinking about CRM data, well, I am expecting organizations and people and mail and activity, etc. So this all looks good. You can actually see a breakdown of the number of properties each object has and the number of entities. In fact, I can kind of click on one of these models and it will show me what the data will actually look like that's coming in. So I get this kind of schema preview of what data I'm expecting from that system. So that all looks good. I'll click next. And of course, what I would want in a perfect situation is that as soon as a lead is actually created in the CRM system, I would kind of like to know, well, first of all, does this customer show the signs of a purchasing pattern? And does this customer meet the kind of specifications of some company that would look like they would churn? So I would definitely want to enable this webhooks and real-time data from the HubSpot CRM so I can get these answers as quick as possible. I'm going to go and start ingesting this data. Now, one of the first things that we'll do is it'll go off and fetch this data. And what we're wanting to do at this point, of course, is all the kind of classic tasks that we need to do to prepare the data before we send it off to a machine learning platform. Of course, this is cleaning and standardizing and normalizing on data, maybe imputing some records. Now, as the crawl finishes, it's going to kick into the processing stage, and that's where all of this is done by CluedIn. So it's going to help me deduplicate the records. It's going to help me blend these records for existing records that might already exist in my account. And within a couple of moments, it's going to show me, okay, job's finished. Okay, that looks about right, about 2,500 records. And it's going to prompt me with things I need to do with the data. And this is important when it comes to machine learning, is that the first thing I'm met with is my quality scores. And you could probably imagine that if I was to send bad quality data over to the machine learning platform, then we're probably going to get bad results. And if we look at our scores, most of them are not too bad. We've got a couple that are in the red, and I'm not expecting this data to be perfect. I guess CRM data is typically not perfect. But what I can actually do as a business is I can say, well, if we're going to do machine learning with this, then I want to be able to edit what I would deem acceptable as accuracy before we send it over to the machine learning platform. So we might actually say it should probably more be like 80%. And as we save this, what CluedIn is going to do, you can see over here on the right-hand side, it's basically going through and identifying, here then are the records that you need to clean to get to that accuracy level. So it's going to facilitate the whole process around finding and identifying which records that we pulled in have that issue of data quality or data accuracy. And then a data engineer that's responsible for this system could go in and start to clean this data. And a good example would be denormalized data. If I take a property like the life cycle stage of a contact, an engineer can start to use an array of different functionality. In this case, we're just going to group the records. And this makes it pretty clear to us over on the left-hand panel, it's going to give us a distribution. So a distribution of the values. And you can see here that there's a pretty obvious issue. Now, of course, this is fine when it's 7,000 records, but typically, once we plug in bigger systems, you're going to have lots of different choices. So for that, we want to use the clustering features. So in CluedIn, we can use different techniques as data engineers for it to start to suggest how we can normalize this data. So a good example would be that we have these 3 records here, and CluedIn is actually identifying and suggesting that we should probably normalize these into this standard value. And that's what I want to do. So I'm going to merge selected and close. And in a couple of moments, that's going to go off and it's going to actually recluster or regroup this and give me the clear sign that, okay, that looks much more normalized. That's something that I would want to make available to the machine learning platform instead of them having to fix these issues on their side. So then how do we make data available to the machine learning platform? So we head over to the consume section. And what we're going to do is we're going to set up a stream. I'm going to set up a stream and I'm going to call it customer data. And what I'm given first as an option is how mature do you want the data? i.e., when we are fetching data from HubSpot, of course, we're doing a lot of things to deduplicate it and catalog it and clean it, and those all take time. And you might find that you need data more real time than not. But of course, there's always a trade-off there. If you need it more real time, then maybe you can't get the cleaning done. You might be able to find a middle ground of what's acceptable. But if I'm sending data over to a machine learning platform, I really need to make sure that it's at its highest maturity in its data. So if we're talking about customer churn, of course, I need to be able to filter by organizations, and I'm wanting to use my catalog that CluedIn builds for you to essentially, I'm looking for companies that are in the deal stage where it's equal to closed won. That dictates for us customers. That's companies that have purchased the CluedIn platform. And what we're going to do is we're going to make this data available to an external service. And we're going to choose Azure ML. Now, Azure ML is a system that we have already, kind of like HubSpot before, we've already connected to in the system. We've already authenticated that we can send over data to that system. And we're going to save. Now, what that does is it's going to track the lineage. And this is important because now we have the full lineage of we received this data from the HubSpot CRM. There might be a mix of data. All our customers might not have just come from the HubSpot system. And it's now saying that I have a track that we have pushed certain data over to the Azure ML platform. Now, what's also important, like we had before, we can actually see that this is the quality of data that is available on that stream that I'm sending over. So now I also have an ability to show the business what quality levels of data I'm making available to the machine learning team. And as you can imagine, as I clean that data over time, that will also be streamed over to that machine learning platform as a new data source. So now if I head over to Azure ML, I should be able to sign in and authenticate. And head over to my datasets, and I should see a dataset there called customer data, I think. So there we go. So now if I was to, for example, start a new experiment, so I'll just take an existing experiment, you could probably imagine that if I go to save datasets and my dataset, that customer data I can just drag on to build my machine learning flows now. And so you can kind of start to imagine how this can fit into the overall flow of facilitating data science teams, advanced analytics teams, machine learning teams with the data they need in a higher quality, with full governance, with full lineage tracking, and really allow that team to kind of focus on what they're good at, which is building the actual models themselves, not necessarily in the cleaning and preparation phase. So hopefully that has given you an insight into how you can use CluedIn to accelerate data science and machine learning teams. I look forward to the next time that we talk.